We just finished the first 5 books of the Bible, and our next book is the book of Joshua, which begins with the sons of Israel crossing the Jordan River and then encircling the city of Jericho. Joshua is mentioned quite a few times in the book of Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and we'll go over these places later. But first, let's study the name of Joshua, as it's more than what just meets the eye. The earliest English Bibles of Tyndale and Coverdale spelled his name Josue, Josue. The King James spelled his name Joshua, which is used in the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. These are English names given to the person called Joshua. The first mention of the man who was to be called Joshua is in Numbers 13:8, where it says, "Of the tribe of Ephraim was Hoshea, son of Nun." A few verses down in Numbers 13:16, it says, "And Moses named Hoshea, son of Nun, Joshua." But what if I told you that Joshua's name would be Jesus? That's right. In the New Testament, the Greek name for Joshua and Jesus is the same, Jesus. But to clarify this, we need to study the Hebrew and Greek texts. To understand the Hebrew name of Joshua, we need to study the Hebrew alphabet for a better understanding. The written Hebrew and the spoken Hebrew are 2 different subjects. Just as in English, the written words of Shakespeare are for all to see through the ages, but the spoken words of Shakespeare, with their pronunciation, can change through time and with different dialects such as British English, Australian English, and American English. The same thing exists with Hebrew. We have the written Hebrew words of the Old Testament from thousands of years ago, but a pronunciation system developed around the year 1000 AD by the Masoretes, groups of Jewish scribal scholars. The pronunciation of the Hebrew letters are heavily influenced by the Masoretes, with their invention of a vowel notation system with marks above and below the letters. But we'll see that there were vowels in Hebrew. Vowels are letters of the alphabet spoken, which flow without a stop of air, such as A, E, I, O, U in English. Well, we've been taught that the Hebrew alphabet didn't have vowels, but with a look at the Greek equivalent letters, we find out that this isn't so. This chart displays the letters of the Hebrew alphabet on the left side, along with the Strong's numbers for the Hebrew words which start with that Hebrew letter. All words that start with an aleph are numbered between 1 and 871. This Strong's Hebrew numbering system is used in a lot of reference books. To the right are the Greek equivalent letters to the Hebrew letters and a pronunciation guide, which we'll go over shortly. For our purpose, let's zero in on just 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which appear in the previous chart and which tie together the names of Lord, Hoshea, and Joshua shown above. The Tetragrammaton on top, our name title of God, translated into English as Lord, and pronounced by some as Yahweh and Jehovah, contains the Yod, He, and Vav. Hoshea contains 2 letters which are found in the Tetragrammaton, the He and Vav. Joshua contains all 3 letters which appear in the Tetragrammaton, the Yod, He, and Vav. To pronounce these Hebrew letters, scholars have accepted the Masoretic tradition of pronunciation. But is this acceptance warranted? As we go further into this study, you'll see that there is a valid alternative to the Masoretic pronunciation, which predates it by 1,300 years. The 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet which are used in the 3 names of the last frame are the He, Vav, Yod, Ain, and Shin. The Greek equivalents are on the right. The online Hebrew interlinear Bible reads from left to right, opposite of most common Hebrew Bibles. But the letters in the individual words read from right to left. We see that Hosea has the same letters as Joshua, but the first letter of Joshua begins with a Yod, which Moses added. The addition of the Yod changed the pronunciation and meaning of the name. Hosea means deliverance. By Moses adding the Yod, the meaning of the name is changed to the Lord is deliverance. Going back to our chart of the 5 letters, we see on the right the Greek equivalent letters of the Hebrew letters. He is a vowel and is translated into Greek as ah 22 times when the proper name in Hebrew begins with the He. Vav is pronounced in Greek sometimes as ah and other times va. The Yod is always pronounced as a vowel, e. The Ain is also a vowel and is pronounced o. And the Shin, a consonant, is pronounced sh. With the names we're studying, Lord, Hosea, and Joshua, we see that the Tetragrammaton contains 3 letters from our group of 5, the Yod, He, and Vav. From the Greek pronunciation of the Hebrew, the Tetragrammaton would have been pronounced Iava. The second word, Hosea, contains 4 letters from our group, with the first and second letters, He and Vav, both of which are found in the Tetragrammaton, and would have been pronounced Avsha, meaning deliverance or salvation, if you wish. But Moses added the Yod, or what I call the Id, and Joshua would be pronounced Eavsha, meaning the Lord is deliverance. Now, whether Eavsha carried over to the time of Jesus and was the way Jesus' name was pronounced is unknown. Between the 1st and 3rd centuries before Christ, the Hebrew Scriptures were translated into Greek by Jewish scholars. The Greek Scriptures were at that time accepted by the Jews as Scripture, as can be seen by the passage in the Mishnah written around the time of Christ, which reads, Rabban Simeon B. Gamaliel says, the books, too, they have only permitted to be written in Greek, Megillah 1:8, meaning, of course, in addition to Hebrew. But by 1000 A.D., did the Masoretes ignore the Greek Scriptures, considering them to be Christian, even though the Hebrew Scriptures were translated by Jewish scholars into Greek hundreds of years before Christ? The translation of the Greek Old Testament Scriptures between the 1st and 3rd centuries before Christ, commonly called the Septuagint, were well received by Greek-speaking Jews worldwide. Much like the English translation of the Hebrew and Greek Scriptures, like the King James, were well received by English-speaking peoples worldwide. In fact, the Greek Scriptures were used by Jews worldwide, and the writers of the New Testament quoted the Greek Old Testament rather than the Hebrew Old Testament. Here we see the translation of both the Hebrew and Greek of Numbers 13:16. The Hebrew reads, Moses is calling Hoshea, son of Nun, Joshua. detailing the name of Joshua by Moses as Yavsha. The Greek reads, "And Moses named Hoshea, son of Nun, Joshua, or Jesus," the same Greek name as Jesus in the New Testament. Notice how in the top illustration, the Hebrew word for Joshua begins with the yod, or as I call it, the ed, and how in the Greek below, Jesus begins with the iota, pronounced also e. Both the Hebrew and Greek begin with the e. How Jesus developed from the Hebrew is worth further study. Before the birth of Christ, we see in Luke 1:31 that Mary was directed by an angel to call her son Jesus, or Jesus. It says, "And behold, you shall conceive in the womb, and shall give birth to a son, and shall call his name Jesus," or Jesus in the Greek. Jesus means the Lord is deliverance, or salvation if you prefer, and it's the same Greek name as Joshua, who's mentioned twice in the New Testament as Jesus, in Acts 7:45 and Hebrews 4:8. The New Testament scriptures were completely written in Greek, and the writers of the New Testament quoted the Greek Old Testament rather than the Hebrew, for the readers of these scriptures were generally Greek-speaking peoples from around the Mediterranean world. Later, with the rejection of the Christ by the Jews, the Greek scriptures, some written even before Christ, called the Apocrypha, or Deuterocanonicals, were rejected by the Jews. Now, jumping forward 1,000 years, we see the Masoretes developing a pronunciation system of the Hebrew. But did they consult the Greek in that it was tied to Christianity? Now, what's wonderful is that by having the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which has both the Greek Old and New Testaments, one can compare the two texts. As you can see, the Greek spelling of Joshua and Jesus are the same, Jesus. The name Jesus, or Isun in the accusative, was translated from the Hebrew hundreds of years before the arrival of Jesus, as we've shown previously. With an English vernacular-only Bible such as the King James Version, which never considered the Greek Old Testament text, this comparison couldn't be made. Of course, if you had a Greek-only Bible other than the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, you would see this. The first mention of Joshua is at Rephidim, where Moses directed Joshua to choose men to deploy against Amalek. This was just after the sons of Israel left Egypt and before the 40-year wilderness experience. This battle is where we see Aaron and Hur holding up Moses' arms while the sons of Israel, led by Joshua, succeed in battle, as long as Moses' arms are lifted up. Next, we read of Moses and Joshua ascending Mount Sinai, where Moses spends 40 days and nights learning of the law and receiving the 2 tablets of stone with the commandments of God written upon them by the hand of God. Moses and Joshua then descended Mount Sinai with the tablets of stone, and they heard the sound in the camp of which Joshua thought was of war, but Moses understood it to be the sound of debauchery. Whenever Moses went to communicate with the Lord, we're told that Joshua would stay in the tent. Then when Joshua heard of Eldad and Medad prophesying in the camp, he told Moses to restrain them, of which Moses responded by saying, "Oh, how it would be given all the people of the Lord were prophets." When the 12 men were sent to spy the land of Canaan, we're given their names and tribes. It's here that we first hear of Hoshea, the son of Nun, an Ephraimite, who was renamed by Moses Joshua. On the spies' return, we are told that Joshua and Caleb tore their cloaks at the refusal of the sons of Israel to go into the land of Canaan. God then says that of the 12 spies, only Joshua and Caleb would enter into the land. Then God tells Moses, "Take to yourself Joshua, son of Nun, a man who has spirit in him, and you shall place your hands upon him, and you shall put your glory upon him, so that the sons of Israel should hearken to him." But as Moses is rejected from passing over the Jordan River because he disobeyed God at water of dispute, he's then directed to choose Joshua to pass over the Jordan River into the land of Canaan and to possess the land. In Numbers and Deuteronomy, we're told that Joshua was to be the one to allot the land of Israel to the tribes once they entered into the land of Canaan. Basically, the person of Jesus, or Joshua, was being prepared for leading the people into the land of Canaan. We'll be using the name Jesus throughout the chapter-by-chapter video seminars going through the book of Joshua, mainly to familiarize you with the name of two people, Joshua and Jesus, who had the same Greek name but were given different English names by the translators of the King James Version. So I hope you'll join us in our chapter-by-chapter video seminars going through the book of Joshua, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. And until then, God bless.